My boyfriend's evil twin is destroying our relationship. When my boyfriend told me I'd have to accept his evil twin brother as part of the package if I wanted to date him, I thought it was a joke. I'd been dating Emilio for a month at that point, and he was this perfect guy who cooked dinner from scratch and rubbed my feet after work. But one day he said, "I have an identical twin brother named Diego. We don't get along. He makes it his personal mission to destroy everything good in my life, especially relationships." I laughed, but Emilio wasn't smiling. He's scared off every girlfriend I've ever had. He shows and says horrible things and causes problems. I've tried restraining orders, but he always finds loopholes. He showed me a photo of him and a guy who looked just like him, standing with an older woman. Emilio was smiling warmly, but the other guy looked like he wanted to murder whoever was holding the camera. "I understand if this is too much baggage for you," he said, but I was already falling for Emilio and figured how bad could one twin brother really be. Plus, Emilio was so apologetic about it and promised he'd do everything he could to keep Diego away from me. For another month, everything was perfect. Emilio and I spent every weekend together exploring the city and trying new restaurants. He met my friends, and they loved him. Then one Tuesday afternoon, when Emilio was at work, I heard knocking at my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Emilio's face, but something was off about his expression. "Hey babe, forgot my key," the voice said. But Emilio was in Seattle for a conference. This was Diego. I didn't open the door, but he kept knocking for 20 minutes. "I know you're in there," he said. "Just wanted to meet the new girlfriend." "God, you're even plainer in person than in photos. No wonder you settled for my brother." He left a note under my door that said, "Eat less carbs, your face is getting puffy." When I told Emilio, he was furious. He filed a police report and installed a Ring camera at my place. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "This is what he does. Please don't let him win." Diego started showing up everywhere when Emilio wasn't around. At my gym, lurking by the machines. At my favorite coffee shop, sitting in the corner staring at me. The worst part was the things he'd say. "That outfit makes you look desperate," Diego said once, appearing beside me at the grocery store. "Like you're trying too hard to be 25 when you're pushing 30. Another time he cornered me in the parking garage at my work. "You know everyone at Emilio's office thinks you're a gold digger, right? They laugh about how you locked him down before someone better could come along." I started feeling paranoid all the time. Every time I saw someone who looked like Emilio from behind, my heart would race. Was it my sweet boyfriend or his psycho twin? Emilio was endlessly supportive, even offering to break up if it was too much for me. "I wouldn't blame you," he said one night while holding me after another Diego encounter where he'd told me my voice was annoying. "This is my burden, not yours." But I loved Emilio. He was worth it. We just had to figure out how to handle Diego. It hit a new low last month when I was staying at Emilio's apartment while he was visiting his sick cousin in Phoenix. I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Diego standing in the bedroom doorway just watching me sleep. "You look fat when you sleep," he said when I screamed and scrambled for my phone. "Mouth all open like that. Really disgusting." He walked out before I could call 911, leaving the front door wide open. When Emilio got home the next morning on the first flight back, he was devastated. "He still has a key somehow," Emilio said, immediately calling a locksmith. "I'm going to handle this once and for all." He said he'd talked to his parents about getting Diego into a facility. Then I was at Target buying shampoo when I saw a familiar woman in the next aisle. It was the mom from the photo, Emilio's mother. I recognized her from the picture I'd seen of her with the twins, even though I'd never met her, and Emilio had always been kind of strange when I asked why not. My heart started pounding. What if she was here with Diego? But she was alone, comparing prices on laundry detergent. I worked up my courage and approached her. "Mrs. Gonzalez?" I said. "I'm dating your son, Emilio." Her face lit up immediately. "Oh, you must be the girlfriend he keeps talking about. So wonderful to meet you." She hugged me, and I smelled her flowery perfume. We chatted about Emilio, and I finally asked the question burning in my mind. "Is Diego here with you? I'd rather not run into him if possible." She looked at me with nothing but confusion in her eyes. "Who's Diego?" My jaw dropped. Was Diego really Emilio all along? I got in my car and raced home, ready to confront him. I sat in my car in the Target parking lot with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Mrs. Gonzalez's words kept playing over and over in my head. "Who's Diego?" she had asked with real confusion on her face, not like someone pretending or hiding something. I started thinking about every single time Diego had shown up. The note under my door about eating less carbs. Him standing by the machines at my gym just staring. The way he cornered me in the parking garage at work and told me everyone thought I was a gold digger. That horrible night when I woke up at 3 in the morning and he was just standing in the bedroom doorway watching me sleep, telling me I looked fat with my mouth hanging open. Every mean thing, every cruel comment, every time I felt scared and paranoid. It was all Emilio. There was no evil twin brother. There was just Emilio, my sweet boyfriend who cooked dinner and rubbed my feet, except he was also the person terrorizing me. My stomach felt sick and my chest got tight. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a minute, trying to figure out what to do. I needed to be sure before I did anything crazy. I pulled up Emilio's number and hit call, forcing myself to breathe normal. He answered on the second ring and his voice sounded warm and happy. I asked him casual questions about his cousin in Phoenix, how the visit went, if his cousin was feeling better. He told me all these details about the hospital and the doctors and how worried the family was. His voice had that caring tone he always used, the one that made me feel safe. I asked what he was doing tonight, and he said he was just getting home from work. Asked how my day went, offered to pick up dinner from that Thai place I liked. Everything about the conversation felt normal and sweet, exactly like the Emilio I thought I knew. I told him I was really tired and we would talk later. I hung up before my voice could crack and give away that something was wrong. My hands were shaking worse now. I hit Melody's number right away and she answered fast. I started talking in this rushed way, explaining everything that just happened at Target. I told her about meeting Mrs. Gonzalez and how nice she was, how she hugged me and seemed so happy to meet me. Then I told her about asking if Diego was there, and the total confusion on Mrs. Gonzalez's face when she asked who Diego was. Melody got really quiet on the other end, and then she said I needed to come to her place right now. She told me not to confront Emilio by myself, that this was serious and possibly dangerous. I started my car and drove toward her apartment while my mind kept racing through all the months of gaslighting. Every time Emilio had held me after a Diego encounter and told me it would be okay. Every time he filed a police report or offered to break up with me to spare me from his burden. Every sweet text and foot rub and home-cooked meal. It was all part of the same sick game. I got to Melody's apartment and she was waiting at the door. We sat on her couch and I kept talking through everything, trying to make sense of it. She listened and asked questions and helped me think it through. We talked about how I should confront him, what I should say, how to stay safe. We decided I needed to meet him somewhere public during the day with lots of people around. Melody said she would be on standby to call the police if anything went wrong. My phone buzzed and I looked down to see a text from Emilio. It said he was worried about me and asked if I was okay. Said he loved me and hoped I was getting some rest. Reading those words made me feel sick to my stomach. That sweet, caring boyfriend voice in text form, except now I knew what he really was. Melody saw my face and asked what was wrong. I showed her the text and she shook her head. We kept planning late into the night until I finally felt ready. The next evening, I met Emilio at a coffee shop downtown that was always packed with people. I got there early and picked a table right in the middle where everyone could see us. My heart was pounding when he walked in and smiled at me, coming over to kiss my cheek like everything was normal. We sat down and I didn't waste time with small talk. I looked right at him and said I met his mother at Target yesterday, and she told me there was no Diego. His face went completely blank for about 3 seconds. Then he forced out this confused laugh that sounded fake. He said his mom gets confused sometimes, that she had been in denial about Diego since they were kids because his behavior embarrassed her so much. I watched his face carefully while he talked. When I pushed back and said his mom seemed totally certain and not confused at all, his whole tone changed. He started sounding hurt and defensive. He said I ambushed his mother, that I went behind his back instead of trusting him. He asked why I would believe someone I just met over my own boyfriend. The way he was talking made me feel crazy for a second. Exactly like how Diego's insults used to make me feel. That same twisted feeling where I started doubting what I knew was true. But I held on to what Mrs. Gonzalez had said, and how genuine the confusion in her eyes had been. I told Emilio I needed to see real proof. Birth certificates or childhood photos showing 2 boys or anything official that proved Diego existed. His jaw got tight and he said all the family photos were at his parents' house. He claimed his mom probably hid them away because she was ashamed of having a son like Diego. His explanations kept getting longer and more complicated. Every time I asked a simple question, he had this elaborate answer ready. When I calmly repeated that I needed actual documentation, something changed in Emilio's face. His anger came out in a way I had never seen from nice Emilio before. His voice got loud right there in the coffee shop. He said I was calling him a liar, that if I didn't trust him, we should just break up right now. Other customers started glancing over at our table. I sat there looking at him and suddenly I could see it so clearly. This rage, this need to control, this anger at being questioned. This was what I had been seeing all along. I just thought it was Diego. The cruel comments and stalking and mind games were all coming from the same person. The sweet boyfriend and the evil twin were both Emilio. I stood up from the table without saying anything else. I grabbed my purse and walked out of the coffee shop while he called after me. I got in my car and drove straight home, my whole body shaking. The first thing I did when I got inside my apartment was check every single lock on my doors and windows. I texted Melody that I was safe and told her everything that happened. Then I went to my door keypad and changed the entry code to something new. I grabbed a chair from my kitchen and propped it under the door handle like I used to do when Diego was supposedly stalking me. Standing there in my apartment, everything felt different now. The space felt haunted by all those times I thought Diego had been here. Except it was never Diego. It was always Emilio. That night I couldn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about every interaction, every moment of fear, every time I had comforted myself by calling Emilio and hearing his sweet voice. Around 2 a.m, I got up and opened my laptop. I pulled up all my Ring doorbell footage from the past few months. I started watching every single Diego visit with completely new eyes. The first video showed him knocking on my door that Tuesday when Emilio was supposedly in Seattle. I watched the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot. Then I pulled up a video of Emilio from a few weeks before that. The weight shifting was exactly the same. I watched Diego leaving the note under my door and saw how he used his left hand. Emilio was left-handed. I saw Diego walking away from my building and noticed the way he swung his arms. I had seen Emilio walk exactly like that 100 times. Every tiny detail of body language was identical. The hand gestures when he talked. The way he tilted his head. How he stood with his weight more on his right leg. It was all the same person. I felt so stupid for not seeing it before. But I also knew he had been deliberately using my trust against me. He had spent months making me doubt my own eyes and mind. He had made me think I was going crazy while he terrorized me and then comforted me about it. The next morning, I woke up after maybe 2 hours of sleep and grabbed my laptop. I typed Mrs. A. Gonzalez's name into the online phone directory, along with the address Emilio had given me months ago when I asked where his parents lived. Her listing came up right away with a phone number. My hands were shaking. So bad I had to try 3 times to dial the right numbers. While it rang, I kept rehearsing what to say in my head. How do you tell someone their son has been pretending to be 2 different people without sounding totally crazy? She picked up on the 3rd ring with this warm hello and my throat got tight. I forced myself to speak and told her who I was, that we'd met at Target yesterday. She remembered me right away and said how nice it was to talk to me. I took a deep breath and just started explaining everything. The twin brother story Emilio told me. All the Diego incidents over the past months. The harassment and stalking and cruel comments. How I'd been terrified of this evil twin for so long. Mrs. Gonzalez didn't interrupt once while I talked. When I finally finished, there was this really long pause on the phone. Then she said it clearly. She only had 1 son, and she'd never been confused about that. Her voice cracked a little when she kept talking. She said Emilio had always had trouble with relationships and controlling behavior. She knew he'd had problems with past girlfriends, but she never knew the details of what actually happened. She offered to text me family photos from his entire childhood to prove he was an only child. I thanked her and gave her my number. Within just a few minutes, my phone started buzzing over and over with incoming texts. Baby pictures of 1 infant in a blue blanket. Elementary school portraits showing 1 boy with a gap-toothed smile. Middle school photos of 1 awkward teenager. High school graduation with 1 young man in a cap and gown. Family vacation pictures at the beach, at Disney World, at someone's wedding, always showing 1 son with his parents. Mrs. Gonzalez captioned each photo with the date and location. Her texts got more and more upset as she kept sending them. She apologized like 5 times saying she knew Emilio had problems, but she never imagined this level of lying and manipulation. She said she was so sorry for what I'd been through. I sat there on my couch looking at decades of proof that Diego never existed. I texted Melody right away and told her I needed her to stay over that night. I was scared of what Emilio might do now that his whole lie was falling apart. She said she'd come straight over after work with overnight stuff. That evening, she showed up at my door with a duffel bag and a baseball bat. She joked that we were having a sleepover like when we were kids, but the bat was just in case. Having her there made my apartment feel safer. Every corner of my place felt haunted by all those Diego incidents that were really just Emilio the whole time. The bedroom where he stood watching me sleep. The front door where he knocked and left that mean note. The living room where I'd cried to Emilio on the phone about being stalked. Melody ordered us pizza and we tried to watch a movie, but I couldn't focus. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. It was from Emilio. I looked at Melody and she told me to play it on speaker, so we could both hear. His voice came through my phone speaker, and his whole story had changed. Now he was saying Diego was actually a half-brother from his dad's previous relationship. Or wait, maybe Diego was a cousin who got raised like a brother. The details kept shifting even within the same voicemail. It was so obvious he was just making stuff up as he went along. His voice sounded desperate and he kept saying he could explain everything properly if I'd just call him back. Please call him back. He loved me and we could work this out. Melody and I looked at each other when it ended. She said that was the most pathetic thing she'd ever heard. The lies were so bad he couldn't even keep them straight anymore. The next day, I decided to document everything I could. I opened a new spreadsheet on my laptop and started creating a detailed timeline. I put in every single Diego incident I could remember with the exact date and time. Then I went through my texts and emails with Emilio to find where he'd told me he was during each incident. Melody came over again after work to help me organize it all. We made columns for date, time, location, what happened, and what Emilio claimed he was doing. The patterns jumped out immediately. Diego appeared at my gym on a Tuesday morning when Emilio said he was at an early work meeting. Diego showed up at the coffee shop on a Thursday afternoon when Emilio claimed he was in back-to-back conference calls. Diego broke into my apartment at 3 a.m. when Emilio said he was in Phoenix visiting his sick cousin. Every single time Diego appeared, Emilio had told me he was somewhere else, but the timing always worked out for it to be the same person. Melody kept shaking her head as we filled in the spreadsheet. She said this was seriously messed up, and she couldn't believe someone would plan this out so carefully. I pulled up the county website and searched their public birth records database. I typed in Gonzalez with birth years around when Emilio would have been born. I searched for any twins, any siblings, any half-brothers with similar ages. Nothing came up except one single birth certificate for Emilio Gonzalez. No Diego, No twin brother, no half-sibling, just official county records showing one baby boy born to Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez on that date. The documentation confirmed what I already knew in my gut, but seeing it in actual government records made it feel more real. This wasn't just his mom's word or my suspicions. This was legal proof that Diego never existed. I opened Facebook and searched for Aubrey, one of Emilio's ex-girlfriends. I'd found her profile months ago when I first heard about his relationship history and how Diego supposedly scared off all his girlfriends. My stomach felt sick as I clicked to send her a message. I kept it short and just said I was currently dating Emilio and had some questions about an evil twin brother he'd mentioned. I asked if she had a few minutes to talk about her experience. My finger hovered over the send button for like a full minute before I finally pressed it. Then I just sat there staring at my phone waiting to see if she'd respond. She wrote back within an hour. Her message made my whole body go cold. She said, "Oh my God, he's still using that story," and asked if I was okay. She said there was no twin. She described the exact same pattern I'd experienced. Sweet, perfect Emilio at first, who seemed like the ideal boyfriend. Then Diego started showing up to harass her. The same cruel comments about her appearance. The same stalking behavior. The same gaslighting when she tried to talk to Emilio about it. She said the terror of never knowing which version she'd encounter. She told me she'd reported it to the police but couldn't prove it was the same person doing everything. She finally had to move to a different city without telling Emilio where she went just to escape him. Then Aubrey sent screenshots. Old text messages from a number labeled Diego in her phone. The insults were so similar to what I'd gotten. Comments about her weight and her face. Accusations that she was only with Emilio for his money. And threats disguised as warnings about what would happen if she didn't leave him alone. She sent me a police report number from 2 years ago. She said she'd filed it after Diego, or really Emilio, had followed her home from work one night. She told me she finally got away by moving across the state and blocking every possible way he could contact her. She said she was so sorry this was happening to me too, and she wished she'd done more to stop him back then. Reading her messages, I felt this weird mix of validation and horror. Validation that I wasn't crazy and this was a real pattern of abuse. Horror that he'd done this before and gotten away with it and then just found a new girlfriend to terrorize. The next morning, I printed everything out and drove to the police station. My hands shook as I walked up to the front desk and asked to file a report about stalking and harassment. The officer at the desk called someone named Jeff Casey, and a few minutes later, this guy in his 40s came out to meet me. He had kind eyes and didn't look annoyed or dismissive like I was worried he might. Officer Jeff led me to a small interview room with a table and 2 chairs. I sat down and pulled out my folder of evidence while he grabbed a notepad. He told me to start from the beginning and just tell him everything. So I did. I explained about Emilio and the fake twin Diego and how I thought it was real for months. I showed him the ring footage of Diego at my door. I told him about the break-in at 3 a.m. I showed him the screenshots from Aubrey describing the exact same pattern with her. I showed him Mrs. Gonzalez's texts confirming Emilio is an only child. I showed him the birth certificate search showing no twin. Officer Jeff took notes the whole time without interrupting me once. When I finished, he looked up and said he'd seen cases like this before. He said the validation in his voice made me want to cry because I'd spent so long being told Diego was the problem, when really it was Emilio gaslighting me the entire time. Officer Jeff explained that creating a fake identity isn't technically illegal on its own. But everything Emilio did while pretending to be Diego absolutely was. The stalking at my gym and coffee shop, the harassment and insults, the trespassing when he broke into the apartment at 3 a.m., the threatening notes under my door. All of that added up to prosecutable offenses. He said I should document everything going forward. Every text, every sighting, every incident. He told me to change all my locks immediately and update all my passwords in case Emilio had access to any of my accounts. He said I should seriously consider filing for a restraining order. Hearing an actual police officer take this seriously and explain my legal options made me feel less insane. For months, Emilio had been telling me Diego was the problem, and I just needed to be patient. Now Officer Jeff was confirming that what happened to me was real abuse and I had every right to protect myself. I left the station feeling shaky but validated. My phone buzzed in my car. 3 texts from Emilio. The first one said he was so sorry for yesterday and he understood why I was confused. The second said his mom gets things mixed up sometimes and he'd talk to her doctor about her memory. The third said we could work through this if I just trusted him. I stared at the messages and felt sick. The lies were so obvious now. Over the next few hours, more texts came through. He said I was overreacting. He said I was destroying our relationship over a misunderstanding. He said his mother never approved of him dating and she was lying to break us up. He said he loved me and couldn't believe I'd turn on him like this. The manipulation was so clear now that I was seeing it without the fog of his gaslighting. Each message was a giant red flag that I would have made excuses for before. I screenshot every single one and added them to my evidence folder. That afternoon, I went to my workplace and asked to speak with the head of security. I showed him Emilio's photo and explained that he was no longer allowed on the premises. I asked them to call the police if he showed up. The security guy took it seriously and updated their system right away. Then I went to my apartment building and talked to the manager. I explained the situation and provided Emilio's photo. The manager updated my file with a note that Emilio was not authorized as a guest anymore. She also changed the main entrance code and gave me the new one. Taking these concrete steps made me feel less powerless. For months, I'd been living in fear of Diego showing up anywhere. Now I was actively protecting myself and setting boundaries. Back at home, I remembered something Emilio had mentioned months ago about a coworker named Tristan. I found Tristan's profile on LinkedIn and sent him a message. I kept it kind of vague, but said I was verifying something important about Emilio's family. I asked directly if Emilio had ever mentioned having a twin brother, or if Tristan had met any of his siblings. My heart pounded as I hit send. This was another piece of the puzzle. If Emilio's coworker had never heard about Diego either, that was more proof. Tristan replied within 2 hours. He said he'd worked with Emilio for 3 years, and this was the first he'd ever heard about a twin. He said as far as he knew, Emilio was an only child. Then Tristan added something interesting. He said Emilio disappeared a lot during work hours. Long lunches that he couldn't explain. Random absences that their manager had talked to him about multiple times. I pulled up my timeline spreadsheet and cross-checked. Every single time Diego had shown up to harass me, it matched a time when Emilio should have been at work. The gym at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The coffee shop at 11 a.m. on a Thursday. The grocery store at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. Tristan's information about Emilio's work absences confirmed what I already suspected. Emilio was leaving work to stalk me while pretending to be his evil twin. I opened my laptop and searched for the Seattle conference Emilio claimed to be at when Diego broke into the apartment. I found the conference website and checked the dates. My stomach dropped. The conference wasn't the week Emilio said. It was the following week. I checked social media and found posts from actual attendees with dates and timestamps. Emilio had lied about being in Seattle. He was in town the entire time. Free to use his key to get into his own apartment where I was staying. Free to stand in the bedroom doorway at 3 a.m. and call me fat while I slept. The proof was right there in the conference schedule that didn't match his story. I called Officer Jeff and told him about Tristan's message and the conference dates. He said this was all good documentation. Then he suggested something. He said we could do a controlled test. I could tell Emilio I was going out of town this weekend to visit family. But actually, I'd stay at a friend's place and keep my Ring camera monitoring my apartment. If Diego showed up while I was supposedly gone, we'd have clear proof that Emilio was monitoring my schedule and using it to harass me. Officer Jeff said he'd coordinate with me on the details. We met again the next day to plan it out. Officer Jeff explained the legal boundaries carefully. I could monitor my own property and document who approached it, but I couldn't set traps or do anything to provoke a confrontation. He said he'd arrange for extra patrols in my area that weekend. He gave me his direct cell number to call if anything happened. Having official police involvement made this feel real and serious. It validated all the fear I'd been carrying for months. I called Melody and explained what we were planning. She immediately said I could stay at her place for the weekend. That Friday afternoon, I texted Emilio casually saying I was driving to visit my parents and would be gone until Sunday. He texted back saying to have a safe trip. Then I packed a bag and drove to Melody's apartment across town. We set up my laptop in her living room with the Ring camera app streaming live. We turned off all the lights at my apartment to make it look empty and unoccupied. Then we waited. Melody ordered pizza and we camped out on her couch watching the camera feed. Around 11 p.m. a figure appeared on the screen walking up to my door. My breath caught. It was Emilio. He looked directly at the camera for a second, then checked the door handle. He tried it twice. Then he leaned close to the peephole like he was trying to see inside. He stood there for what felt like forever, but was probably 5 minutes. Finally, he walked away. The whole thing was captured in high-resolution video. His face was completely clear. This was undeniable proof that Emilio had come to my apartment while I told him I was out of town. Proof that he'd been the one stalking me all along. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and started copying the video file to 3 different places. First to my laptop hard drive, then to a cloud storage account, and finally to a USB drive I dug out of my desk drawer. The whole time I kept glancing at the frozen frame on the screen showing Emilio's face clear as day at my door. I texted Officer Jeff even though it was almost midnight, just sending the video file with a message that said I had proof. He responded within 5 minutes saying he'd log it as a new incident and we'd talk in the morning. Melody sat next to me on the couch looking at the footage over and over. She kept pointing out details like how he checked the doorknob twice and how he stood there for so long just staring at the camera. This wasn't someone who accidentally went to the wrong apartment. This was calculated stalking behavior caught on video with a timestamp showing I was supposed to be out of town. I barely slept that night, my brain running through everything I needed to do next. Monday morning, I was at the courthouse when it opened at 8. I'd printed out everything and organized it in a folder with tabs. The timeline showing every incident matched against Emilio's claimed locations. Screenshots from the Ring camera, including the new footage from Friday night. The police reports Officer Jeff had filed. Screenshots of Aubrey's messages about her experience. Text messages from Mrs. E. Gonzalez with the family photos proving Emilio was an only child. I stood in line at the clerk's window rehearsing what I'd say. But when my turn came, the clerk was really nice and walked me through the whole process. She reviewed each piece of documentation carefully, making notes on her computer. She said the judge would review my petition for a temporary restraining order, and I'd get a hearing date within the week. The whole appointment took maybe 40 minutes. But walking out of that courthouse, I felt different. Like I'd finally stopped being a victim and started fighting back. The fear was still there, but now it had direction and purpose instead of just making me feel crazy and small. 2 days later, Officer Jeff called to say the temporary order got approved. A different officer would serve Emilio with the papers at his apartment that afternoon. I spent the whole day jumping every time my phone buzzed, waiting to hear that it was done. Officer Jeff said Emilio would have to stay away from me, my home, and my workplace, or he'd face criminal charges. The order was temporary for now, but the hearing would decide if it became permanent. I cleaned my apartment even though it was already clean, just needing something to do with my hands. I reorganized my closet and wiped down the kitchen counters 3 times. Around 6 that evening, Officer Jeff texted that the papers had been served and Emilio had accepted them without incident. I should expect him to try contacting me anyway and to document everything. That night, I barely ate dinner, my stomach too tight with nerves about what Emilio would do next. The call came from an unknown number the next morning while I was getting ready for work. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Emilio's voice came through angry and loud, nothing like the sweet boyfriend I'd fallen for months ago. He said the ring footage had to be fake or edited, that someone was framing him. He insisted he was home that whole night and could prove it even though he couldn't. Then he switched tactics and said I must be seeing someone else, that this was all an excuse to break up with him for another guy. The accusations got wilder and more desperate as he talked. He said I'd regret destroying his reputation over lies. He said his lawyer would prove I manipulated everything. His voice had this edge to it that made my hands shake. I didn't say a single word back, just listened while my phone recorded the whole call. When he finally ran out of steam and hung up, I saved the recording and forwarded it to Officer Jeff. This was exactly the kind of violation that would help my case, even though part of me wished he'd just accepted the order and left me alone. I pulled up Aubrey's contact information and sent her a long message explaining about the restraining order hearing coming up. I asked if she'd be willing to provide her old police report and maybe testify about the pattern she experienced. Her response came back within an hour. She said absolutely yes, she'd do whatever I needed. She sent me her police report number and the name of the officer who'd taken her statement 2 years ago. She wrote that she wished she'd pushed harder with her own case back then. Maybe if she had, Emilio wouldn't have been free to do this to someone else. Reading her messages made me feel less alone in this whole thing. Here was someone who understood exactly what I'd been through because she'd lived it herself. She knew how the sweet Emilio turned into something cruel and calculated. She knew how he made you question your own mind. Having her support meant everything, knowing I wasn't crazy or dramatic like Emilio always tried to make me feel. Officer Jeff called me directly the next afternoon with an update. He said he was flagging my case to the county prosecutor's office because of the pattern across multiple victims and the escalating behavior. They'd review everything to decide about criminal charges for stalking and harassment beyond just the restraining order. He said cases like mine where there's clear documentation and multiple victims tend to get taken seriously. The prosecutor would look at Aubrey's old report, my new evidence, and the pattern of behavior. It could take a few weeks for them to make a decision, but he wanted me to know the wheels were turning. Hearing that the system was finally taking this seriously after months of feeling dismissed made something loosen in my chest. Emilio had spent so long making me feel like I was overreacting to normal relationship problems. Now official people with badges and legal authority were saying no, this is actual criminal behavior that needs consequences. My phone rang that evening and Mrs. D. Gonzalez's name showed up on the screen. I answered and her voice sounded shaky and older than it had at Target. She said she'd confronted Emilio about everything I'd told her. At first he tried to keep lying, but she pushed and pushed until he finally broke down and admitted there was no Diego. She kept saying she was so sorry, that she was horrified by what he'd done. She said she believed everything I'd reported about the stalking and harassment. She was setting boundaries with him now and demanding he get professional help. She kept apologizing for not seeing how disturbed his behavior had become, for making excuses for him over the years. I told her it wasn't her fault, that Emilio was really good at hiding his true nature. But having his own mother validate my experience and believe me meant more than I could explain. It was like the last piece of doubt got erased, replaced by certainty that I'd done the right thing by fighting back. Mrs. Gonzalez kept talking, and more details came out about Emilio's past. She said he'd had problems in previous relationships where he got controlling and possessive, but he always blamed the women, saying they were dramatic or unstable or cheating on him. She admitted she'd enabled him by believing his version of events and making excuses for his behavior. Now she was seeing the real pattern and it made her sick. She said other girlfriends had complained about him showing up places unexpectedly, or accusing them of things they didn't do. But Emilio always had explanations that seemed reasonable at the time. She never imagined he'd create an entire fake identity to terrorize someone. Then she said something that made tears come to my eyes. She offered to testify at my restraining order hearing if it would help my case. She said she owed it to me and to his other victims to tell the truth about his history. Having his own mother willing to stand up against him in court felt powerful in a way I couldn't quite name. I started packing up my stuff to move temporarily into Melody's guest room. I kept my apartment lease because I wasn't going to let Emilio drive me out of my home permanently. But for now, I needed to vary my patterns and routines so he couldn't predict where I'd be. I packed enough clothes for a few weeks and grabbed my laptop and important documents. Melody helped me carry boxes down to my car, both of us checking the parking lot constantly for any sign of Emilio. Driving to her place, I took a different route than usual, watching my rearview mirror the whole way. Every car that stayed behind me for more than a few blocks made my pulse spike. Once I got settled in Melody's guest room, I sat down and mapped out new routes to work, new times to go to the gym, new coffee shops to visit. The hypervigilance was tiring but necessary. Every time I left the house, I scanned crowds for Emilio's face. Every time I got in my car, I checked the back seat and under the vehicle. I varied when I left for work each morning by 15 or 20 minutes. The constant awareness was draining, but it felt better than being an easy target. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message said he just wanted to apologize in person and explain everything. That if I'd just meet him for coffee, we could talk this through like adults. I knew immediately it was Emilio using a new number to get around the restraining order. My finger hovered over the screen for a second before I screenshotted the message without responding. Then I forwarded it straight to Officer Jeff with a note about the violation. He texted back confirming he'd add it to my case file. Each time Emilio broke the order, he was building my case stronger, giving the judge more reasons to make the restraining order permanent. But part of me just wanted him to stop, to accept that it was over and leave me alone. I blocked the new number and turned my phone face down on the table, trying not to think about what he might do next. 3 nights later, I walked out of Melody's building around 11 p.m. to grab my charger from my car. The parking lot was mostly empty and quiet, except for the buzz of streetlights overhead. I was halfway across the pavement when I saw a dark sedan parked across the street with someone sitting in the driver's seat. My stomach dropped as I got closer and recognized the silhouette. It was Emilio. He was just sitting there watching the entrance to Melody's building. My hand started shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 while turning back toward the building. The dispatcher answered, and I explained the situation as calmly as I could manage while my heart pounded in my chest. She told me to stay on the line and go back inside where it was safe. I pushed through the lobby doors and stood near the windows where I could still see his car, but he couldn't easily get to me. The dispatcher kept talking to me in a steady voice, asking questions about the restraining order and describing what Emilio was doing. 2 police cars arrived within maybe 8 minutes and pulled up near his vehicle with their lights flashing. By the time the officers got out of their cars, Emilio had already started his engine and drove off down the street. One of the patrol cars followed him while the other officers came inside to take my statement. The 2 responding officers were professional and took detailed notes about everything. They photographed the security footage from Melody's building that showed Emilio's car parked across the street for over 40 minutes before I came outside. One officer said they got his license plate number and would add this incident to my case file. She explained that him fleeing when police arrived showed consciousness of guilt and made the stalking pattern even clearer. They said they would increase patrols around Melody's neighborhood and document this as another restraining order violation. The male officer asked if I felt safe staying here tonight, and I said yes with Melody home. After they left, I sat on her couch feeling drained and scared about how far Emilio was willing to go. He knew where I was staying now, which meant I needed to be even more careful about my movements and routines. The next afternoon, I got a private message on Facebook from Tristan. He said Emilio's workplace had been informed about the restraining order through official channels. HR was conducting their own investigation into his behavior, and they were reviewing his time card records against all the dates I had provided when supposed Diego incidents happened. Tristan said several co-workers had noticed Emilio taking long, unexplained absences and leaving work early without proper approval. The company was taking it seriously because they didn't want any liability if an employee was using work time to stalk someone. Reading Tristan's message gave me mixed feelings that swirled around in my chest. Part of me felt glad that Emilio might face professional consequences for what he did, but another part of me felt guilty, like maybe I was destroying his whole life. I had to remind myself that he chose to do all of this, and I was just protecting myself and holding him responsible. 2 days later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office asking me to come in for a meeting. A woman named Miss Smith explained they were reviewing my case to potentially file criminal charges for stalking and harassment beyond just the restraining order. She said my hearing for the permanent restraining order was scheduled for the following week. I felt my stomach twist with nerves at the thought of going to court. That evening, Officer Jeff called to walk me through what to expect at the hearing. He explained I would need to bring all my evidence and be prepared to possibly testify about what happened. The worst part was that Emilio would be in the courtroom too, sitting across from me with his lawyer. Jeff's voice was calm and steady as he talked me through the process. He said I had done everything right by documenting so thoroughly, and that my case was strong. Knowing he believed me helped, but I still felt scared about facing Emilio in court. Alone at Melody's place one evening while she was at work, I sat down with a notebook and started writing a letter to Emilio that I knew I would never send. The words poured out onto the pages as I wrote about my grief over losing the relationship I thought we had. I mourned the sweet man who cooked me dinner from scratch and rubbed my feet after long days at work. I wrote about how much it hurt to realize that person was just a mask hiding someone cruel and manipulative. The letter helped me process my complicated feelings about how the love I felt was real, even though the person I loved never truly existed. Writing it all down made my chest feel lighter somehow, like I was releasing some of the pain I had been carrying around. When I finished, I folded the pages and put them in an envelope that I tucked into my journal. I would never give it to him, but having those words written down mattered to me. The following Tuesday, I went to my first counseling session at a domestic violence resource center that Officer Jeff had recommended. The therapist was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes who listened without interrupting as I explained everything that happened. She helped me understand psychological abuse patterns and something called gaslighting, where abusers make victims doubt their own perceptions of reality. She said what I experienced was severe emotional abuse that Emilio designed specifically to make me feel crazy and unsure of myself. Learning the proper terms and patterns for what he did helped me see it more clearly. She validated that none of this was my fault, and that I had been targeted by someone who was very good at manipulation. By the end of the session, I felt like someone finally understood what I had been through and believed me completely. A few days later, I met with Officer Jeff at a coffee shop to discuss his advice about having one final conversation with Emilio. He thought it might help me get closure if I could formally end the relationship and state my boundaries directly to Emilio's face. Melody disagreed when I told her about the plan and said I shouldn't talk to him at all. But I needed to say my piece and feel like I had some control over how this ended. Jeff and I decided on a busy shopping mall food court during peak hours on Saturday afternoon. The location would have lots of witnesses and security guards nearby. I would tell Emilio clearly that the relationship was over and he needed to leave me alone. Jeff said he would be there in plain clothes, ready to step in if things went wrong. Before the meeting, Officer Jeff went over all the legal rules with me in detail. He explained I could break up with Emilio and state my boundaries clearly, but I shouldn't engage if he got aggressive or angry. I also shouldn't try to get him to confess to anything or admit what he did. My job was just to state my position and then leave. Jeff would position himself at a nearby table where he could see and hear everything, but Emilio wouldn't know he was there. We practiced what I would say, keeping it short and direct. I wrote down my main points on a note card that I could reference if I got too nervous and forgot. My hands shook as we rehearsed, but my voice stayed mostly steady. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at the mall food court 15 minutes early and bought a coffee I didn't really want just to have something to do with my hands. The food court was packed with families and teenagers, and the noise of conversations echoed off the high ceiling. I sat at a table near the center where lots of people could see us. Officer Jeff was already there, sitting 2 tables away, pretending to read something on his phone. When Emilio walked up right at 2 p.m., my heart started pounding, but I kept my expression calm. He sat down across from me and immediately started to speak, but I held up my hand. I told him directly that I knew Diego never existed, and that I had verified this through multiple sources, including his own mother. I said our relationship was over permanently, and he needed to respect the restraining order and never contact me again. My voice stayed level even though my hands were shaking under the table where he couldn't see them. Emilio's face went through several expressions in quick succession. First he looked shocked, then hurt, then angry. He denied everything, saying I had misunderstood and his mother was confused. Then he switched to blaming me, saying I had gone behind his back and poisoned everyone against him. His voice got louder and people at nearby tables started glancing over. Then suddenly his eyes filled with tears and he reached across the table trying to grab my hand. He said he loved me and we could work through this if I would just listen. The performance was almost convincing in how quickly he shifted between emotions. But then he slipped up and mentioned something Diego had supposedly said to me at the grocery store using the exact words. Only the same person would know those specific details. I pulled my hand back and stared at him. He realized his mistake and his expression changed again. He said he created Diego to protect me from his own anger issues, and that it was like a therapeutic way to separate his dark side from his good side. The admission made my skin crawl because he was confessing to deliberate, calculated psychological abuse while trying to make it sound reasonable. I stand up and slide a folded paper across the table toward him. It has information for a therapist who works with personality disorders and anger problems. I tell him I hope he gets help, but that I'm done being his victim. My legs feel shaky, but I force them to move. I turn and walk toward the mall exit. Behind me, his chair scrapes loudly against the floor. He calls after me that I'll regret this. He says no one will believe me. His voice carries across the food court and people stare. But his threats sound empty now. I have months of ring footage and police reports and witness statements. I keep walking without looking back. My heart pounds, but I don't stop. Emilio's footsteps follow me out of the food court into the main mall corridor. His voice gets louder. He switches between begging me to wait and telling me I'm making a huge mistake. He says we can work this out if I'll just listen. Then his tone shifts and he says I'm ruining his life over nothing. People in the mall turn to watch us. A mother pulls her kids closer. 2 security guards notice the commotion and walk toward us. One of them asks if there's a problem. I pull out my phone and show them the temporary restraining order on my screen. My hands shake, but the document is clear. The guard reads it and looks at Emilio. The other guard positions himself between us. They ask Emilio to come with them. He starts arguing, but they're firm. Officer Jeff appears from where he was watching nearby. He identifies himself and says he witnessed the entire interaction. He tells the guards he'll file an additional report about this violation. The guards escort Emilio toward the mall office. He looks back at me once with an expression I can't read. Officer Jeff walks me to my car and makes sure I get in safely. He says this violation is documented now. More evidence for the hearing. I drive to Melody's place with my hands gripping the wheel tight. 3 weeks later, I sit in a courtroom waiting for my restraining order hearing to start. I have a folder thick with evidence organized by date. Timeline spreadsheet, ring camera footage on a USB drive, police report numbers, screenshots of texts and messages, written statements from Aubrey and Tristan. My lawyer reviews everything one more time. Across the courtroom, Emilio sits with his own lawyer. He's wearing a suit and looks nothing like the man who followed me through the mall. The judge enters and everyone stands. She's a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes. She reviews the case file while we wait. Then she asks me to present my evidence. I walk through the timeline starting with the first Diego appearance. I show the ring footage of him at my door, the parking garage encounter, the night he stood in the bedroom. I explain how his mother confirmed there's no twin, how his coworker verified he's an only child, how his ex-girlfriend experienced the exact same pattern. My voice stays steady and factual. I don't cry or get emotional, just facts and dates and proof. The judge watches the video footage carefully. She asks questions about specific incidents, takes notes on her legal pad. Emilio's lawyer tries to argue the footage could be anyone, that his client has a twin who just isn't in contact with the family. But then the judge reads Mrs. de Gonzalez's written statement. It confirms Emilio is an only child, describes his history of relationship problems, his controlling behavior with past girlfriends. His mother's words carry weight because she has no reason to lie against her own son. Tristan's statement comes next. It shows Emilio's work absences line up perfectly with Diego appearances. Days he called in sick or took long lunches match my timeline exactly. Then Aubrey's old police report from 2 years ago. Different victim, same pattern, same fake twin story. The evidence piles up piece by piece. Each document supports the others. The pattern is clear and consistent. Nothing Emilio's lawyer says can explain it all away. The judge takes a long moment reviewing everything. Then she looks directly at Emilio. Her voice is stern when she speaks. She says his behavior is serious psychological abuse, that creating a fake identity to harass and stalk someone shows calculation and intent. She grants a 1-year restraining order. Emilio must stay at least 500 feet away from me, away from my home and workplace. No contact of any kind. But there's more. The judge mandates anger management counseling, a full psychological evaluation. Both are conditions he must complete. If he violates the order even once, he'll face criminal charges. The judge makes it clear she's taking this seriously, that she sees through his manipulation. I walk out of the courthouse with my lawyer. The spring air feels different, lighter somehow. Officer Jeff is waiting outside and shakes my hand. He says I did everything right, that the evidence I gathered made the case solid. Melody is there too and hugs me tight. For the first time in months, I feel protected by something bigger than just myself. The legal system saw what he did, validated that it was real and wrong. I'm not crazy. I never was. 2 days later, I unlock my apartment door for the first time in weeks. I've been staying with Melody, but this is still my home. I need to make it feel like mine again. Melody comes with me carrying bags from the store. We bought sage and new curtains and some art prints. I light the sage and walk through every room. The smoke curls up toward the ceiling. It's silly maybe, but it feels like I'm clearing out all the bad energy he left behind. We rearrange furniture in the living room, move the couch to a different wall, shift the bookshelf. Small changes that make the space look different. In the bedroom, Melody helps me take down the old curtains. These are the ones Emilio stood behind that night. The ones I stared at in the dark, wondering if someone was there. We fold them up and stuff them in a garbage bag. The new curtains are a different color, brighter. They let in more light. We hang art prints in the hallway. One is a mountain landscape. Another is an abstract design in blues and greens. Each small change makes the apartment feel more like mine, less like a crime scene, less haunted by his presence. By the time we finish, it's evening. I order pizza and we eat sitting on my rearranged couch. The apartment feels different now. Reclaimed. I meet Aubrey at a coffee shop downtown the following week. She's already there when I arrive, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups. She bought me a latte without asking what I wanted. Somehow she just knew. We hug and it feels like hugging someone who really understands. She asks how the hearing went and I tell her everything. How the judge granted the order. How her police report helped establish the pattern. She looks relieved. She says she's proud of me for documenting everything. For pushing for accountability in a way she couldn't. She tells me more about her experience with Emilio. How Diego showed up at her gym. Her work. How the insults were always about her appearance and worth. How Emilio played the supportive boyfriend while his twin destroyed her confidence. She finally escaped by moving to a different city without telling him where. Started over completely. Hearing her story makes me feel less alone. Like I'm not the only one who fell for it. We talk for 2 hours. Share details and timelines. Find comfort in mutual understanding. Before we leave, we exchange numbers. Promise to stay in touch. It's weird how trauma can create unexpected friendships. But I'm grateful for her. For knowing someone else who survived him. Melody keeps pushing me to get back to normal life. She says I can't let him take away all the places and routines I loved. So we start small. She comes with me to my regular gym. We work out side by side and I keep glancing at the door. But Emilio doesn't show up. The restraining order is working. Next we go to my favorite coffee shop. The one where Diego used to sit in the corner staring at me. Now it's just a coffee shop again. We sit at a table and drink lattes and it feels normal. Melody comes with me the first few times to each place. Her presence makes me feel safe enough to reclaim these spaces. After a few weeks, I start going alone, taking the same route to work I used to take, shopping at the same grocery store. Each time gets easier. The hypervigilance starts to fade. I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder anymore, not checking every face to see if it's him. Slowly, I'm taking back pieces of my life. The routines and places that used to bring me joy. They're mine again, not his. My phone buzzes with a text from Mrs. Gonzalez. She says she started seeing a therapist herself. She needs to process her role in enabling Emilio's behavior. All the time she made excuses for him. Blamed his girlfriends for being too sensitive. She's learning about boundaries and how to set healthier ones with him. She thanks me for holding him accountable when she couldn't, for making her see the truth about her son. Reading her message brings mixed feelings. I'm glad she's getting help. Glad she finally sees what he is. But it's sad that it took all this. That she couldn't see it before. That other women had to suffer first. I text back telling her I appreciate her honesty. That I'm glad she's taking steps to change. Her support during the hearing meant everything. Having his own mother validate my experience. Confirm the truth when he was still lying. I save her message. Another piece of evidence that I wasn't wrong. That what happened was real. Officer Jeff calls a few weeks after the hearing. He has an update about Emilio. So far he's been following the restraining order. No violations since the mall incident. He enrolled in the mandated anger management program. Started the psychological evaluation process. Jeff says he'll have regular check-ins to make sure Emilio stays compliant. That if anything changes, he'll let me know right away. He tells me I did everything right. That documenting thoroughly from the start made all the difference. That seeking help early instead of trying to handle it alone was smart. His words mean more than he probably knows. After months of being told I was overreacting, that I was too sensitive, that I was imagining things, having a police officer validate that I responded correctly helps. I wasn't crazy. My fear was justified. My actions were appropriate. I thank him and hang up. Then I sit on my couch in my reclaimed apartment and just breathe. The worst is over. I'm safe now. Protected by law and surrounded by people who believe me. It's not the ending I imagined when I first met Emilio, but it's the ending I fought for. And that makes all the difference. The following week, I start seeing a counselor who works with people who've been through bad relationships. Her office is small with soft lighting, and I sit on a gray couch while she asks me to walk through everything that happened. I tell her about the twin story, the harassment, finding out the truth, all of it. She listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she says something that hits hard. She tells me I can be sad about losing what I thought I had, while also knowing that version of Emilio never really existed. The man who cooked dinner and rubbed my feet was just a mask he wore. But my feelings were real even if he wasn't being honest. That helps somehow. Knowing I'm allowed to miss the good parts without feeling stupid for falling for his act. We work on trusting my gut again since he spent months making me doubt every instinct I had. She gives me homework to write down moments when I second-guess myself and practice believing my first reaction, instead of talking myself out of it. Over the next few sessions, we dig into how he used Diego to say cruel things he wanted to say, but couldn't as nice Emilio. The twin let him be mean while keeping his good guy image. Understanding the psychology behind it makes me feel less stupid for not seeing through it sooner. That weekend, Melody comes over to help me clear out everything connected to Emilio. I've been avoiding it, but she's right that I need to reclaim my space completely. We start in the bedroom where his spare clothes still hang in my closet. I pull out his shirts and jackets, remembering when he left them here acting like we had a future. Melody holds open a garbage bag and I stuff everything inside. In the bathroom, I find his toothbrush and shaving stuff. Those go in the bag too. The kitchen has his favorite coffee mug and the fancy olive oil he bought for cooking. I hesitate on the olive oil since it was expensive, but Melody grabs it and puts it in the donation box. We move through my apartment, finding pieces of him everywhere. Photos from our trips together, a book he gave me for my birthday, his gym shoes by the door. Everything goes into boxes. My bookshelves look empty after we remove his stuff, so I rearrange what's left and move some plants to fill the gaps. Melody helps me push my couch to a different wall, and we hang new curtains I bought last week. By the time we're done, the apartment looks different. Better. We load everything into her car and drive to a donation center across town. Watching the worker take the boxes feels good. Like I'm literally giving away the weight I've been carrying. On the drive back, Melody asks if I want to get my nose pierced, since I always said Emilio thought it would look trashy. We go straight to a piercing place and I get a small silver stud. It's tiny, but it's mine, and he has no say in it anymore. 3 months after the hearing, I wake up one morning and realize I slept through the whole night. I didn't get up to check my locks. Didn't wake up at every small noise thinking someone was trying to get in. Didn't grab my phone to look at the Ring camera feed. I just slept. Normal sleep like I used to have before all this started. The morning sun comes through my window, and I lie there feeling rested for the first time in forever. My body isn't tense, my jaw isn't clenched. I make coffee and sit on my couch, and it's just a regular morning. No fear, no checking over my shoulder, no wondering if today is the day he'll show up again. The hypervigilance that became my default setting is finally loosening its grip. I can breathe fully again without that constant tightness in my chest. Later that day, I go to the grocery store and don't scan every aisle looking for him. I go to my gym and just work out. I'm taking back all the normal parts of life that he stole from me. The review hearing for making the restraining order permanent happens on a cold Tuesday morning. I dress carefully and meet Officer Jeff outside the courthouse. He updated me last week that Emilio has been following the order and completed his anger management program. The hearing is quick. The judge reviews the compliance reports and the counseling records. She asks if I've had any contact or problems. I say no, that he's stayed away completely. She asks if I want the order to continue. I say yes. She signs the paperwork making it permanent and reminds Emilio that any violation will result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. Walking out, I check my phone and see messages from Melody asking how it went. Officer Jeff sent a thumbs-up emoji. Even Mrs. Gonzalez texted saying she's proud of me for seeing this through. Having their support means everything. The legal system actually worked. He faced real consequences. The order will protect me going forward, and he can't just decide one day to come back into my life. I have that security now. 6 months later, I'm walking downtown on a Saturday afternoon, heading to meet Melody for lunch. The weather is nice, and the sidewalks are crowded with people. I'm thinking about what to order when I see him. Emilio is on the opposite sidewalk, maybe 30 feet away. He's wearing a blue jacket I don't recognize and carrying a coffee cup. Our eyes meet for just a second. His face doesn't change, no expression I can read. Then he deliberately looks away and crosses to the other side of the street, putting more distance between us. He disappears into the crowd. My heart beats a little faster, but not like before. Not that panic that used to flood my whole body. I keep walking toward the restaurant without breaking my stride. My hands aren't shaking. I'm not looking over my shoulder. The encounter that would have ruined my whole day months ago now just feels like proof of something important. I got my life back. He doesn't have power over me anymore. I'm not afraid of him. The restraining order works, and he knows it. More than that, I know I'm strong enough to handle seeing him and keep going. I survived what he did and came out the other side. That's mine. He can't take it away.